In the Money is made possible by financial support from Old National Bank and Chicagoans like you. Thank you.
Good evening, Chicago, and welcome to In the Money. I'm your host, Tamara Durbin. Tonight's episode is deeply personal for me because it comes from my own life experience, navigating finances after a major loss. Loss can take many forms. For me, it was the passing of my husband. But for you, it might be the loss of a job, the end of a marriage, or another life-altering change. No matter the situation, losing income while dealing with grief can feel overwhelming. You're suddenly asking yourself, where do I start? How do I keep going financially when everything else feels uncertain? During my own journey, one passage from the good book gave me strength. It says, "Do not panic. I'm with you. There's no need to fear, for I am your God. I'll give you strength, I'll help you, I'll hold you steady, keeping a firm grip on you." Those words carried me through, and my hope tonight is that this conversation will do the same for you. Whether you're facing financial uncertainty from the loss of a loved one, a job, or a marriage, this episode is all about real, practical steps to help you regain control of your money and your future. After the break, I'll be joined by financial advisor Terrell Wilson to discuss how to navigate this difficult season, rebuild financial stability, and manage money after loss. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Robin Robinson, inviting you to tune in to the new CAN TV original program, In Other News. Each week, I will break down newsworthy topics that traditional outlets may ignore, grounded in truth, fun, and blackness, from the trap house to the White House, with the big house in between. Join the conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19, or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Hyper-local news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
Welcome back. My first guest is Terrell Wilson, financial advisor for Edward Jones. Welcome back, Terrell.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you to talk about this important conversation of helping those viewers that are navigating, managing their money after loss today. My first question is, what are some common mistakes, financial mistakes, that people make after a major life loss, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. What I found is that a lot of folks make very, very rapid decisions after a loss. So they don't take the time to sit back, assess their situation, assess their budget, assess their plan before they start to actually make decisions. And so we encourage folks that when you are in one of those type of situations, that you do take that moment and that time to just breathe a little bit and just get, kind of get your feet under yourself, or as a lack of better terms or what have you. Yeah. But really just making sure that you're not making, very, very quick decisions. Take your time on those situations and then move forward from there.
Yeah, I remember when I experienced my loss, that was one thing that people often said, especially with major changes. For me, with my husband passing away, sometimes people have to make housing decisions based on their budget or other decisions. They say, okay, if you can, try to wait because you're in a season of grief.
Absolutely.
So,
and you may make a mistake, right? Making that decision too quickly, especially for housing, or maybe you have other type of assets and things like that. But just taking your time, right? Not selling things too quickly, but taking the time to make sure you do the right thing.
What are some first financial actions someone should take after losing a spouse, a job, or going through a divorce?
Much like I said a little bit earlier about just breathing a little bit, right, and taking a moment to assess. But let's say if it is the loss of a spouse, that's when you're gonna, you want to take a step back. You will have to reassess budgets, of course. There are other things that come into play in those type of situations, like accessing life insurance, like I mentioned a little bit a moment ago. But then you also have to think about, income, right? So now, how am I going to make up the income that now is lost? And I think that's very similar in a divorce situation, right? But there may be other things like alimony or child support or things like that that may come into play to kind of help mitigate some of those losses. But you still have to do the same thing in terms of, I need to budget, I need to make sure that my essential things are taken care of, and then I'm assessing that on a monthly basis, and looking at my income versus the expenses and making sure that I can cover that.
Yeah, and what about, like, say, in the loss of a job?
You got to think about insurance, health insurance, things like that, right?
Oh, yeah,
so if
that's
there
a good
is
one.
a single earner, of course, one of the first things you're doing is unemployment, right? You're applying for that, unless you do get an option like you just shared about a severance package. Those normally go 12 months, maybe 18 months, depending on the career
that sounds real
they're in.
good, Terrell.
It can be, right? I guess there are some 6 months out there as well, but sure, making sure that unemployment, you're looking at that from a health perspective, having health care and health insurance. Something that's out there is called COBRA, but is there to bridge that gap of loss of insurance for a short period of time.
So let's move to talking about debt and expenses a little bit more. How can someone reassess their budget and manage their debt when their financial situation suddenly changes, and how should they prioritize what they pay?
Yeah. So there's a football analogy I'll use really quickly.
Okay.
That's actually called sudden change. It's where, let's say the offense, maybe they just scored, and now the defense is on the field now, and then they cause a situation where the ball gets turned over and it goes back to the offense. So in essence, the offense is on, they're off, and they're back on in a very, very short period of time. So they call it sudden change. And so when you think about that in your financial life, that can happen at any moment, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of prepare for those different things. Hence the reason why we have things like life insurance and financial planning in place, right? We hope those things don't happen, but if they do, we can rely on it. So specific things that I think about would be back to the basics about budget, right? Making sure you have the right budget in place. Making sure that you have assessed income and expenses inside of that. Also ensuring that you have a sufficient amount of emergency funds, right? What I found is so many individuals just don't have enough saved. So that might be the first thing that I do, right? Make sure that my emergency fund is set, it's there, it's available for me. And then I'll start looking at what do I actually need to pay on a monthly basis, right? So I know before we may have used terms like discretionary income and discretionary needs and things like that.
I don't think there's no discretionary money with the emergency. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what it really is, it's what do I absolutely need to pay on a monthly basis? Rent, light, gas, food, clothing. I have to make sure that that's taken care of. So we have to plan for those first, right? The Amazon Prime and the Netflix.
You tell the people again. Not essential. Go ahead.
They're good to have.
Yes.
But they're not, essential.
Especially this is an emergency.
Sure. Right. Exactly.
This is an emergency.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about long-term financial stability. What strategies do you recommend to help people rebuild financial security and plan for the future?
Yeah. So again, first I talk through the budget. I'd make sure we have the emergency funds in place as well. Once those two are set, then I want to look at what things do I have in place for retirement, right? So maybe that's my 401k or 403b, or it depends on the type of job that you have.
Right.
But looking at that plan and making sure that I'm investing in that, especially if the job is offering, the employer is offering a match, right? So you want to make sure you take advantage of that. Outside of that, you want to have a systematic approach to how you invest. And one term is DCA, or dollar cost averaging, where on a monthly basis, you're putting the exact same dollar amount away into your brokerage account to save for the future. But again, that's the third or fourth step after we've making sure that we've gotten a budget, we have the emergency plan, we're investing in the retirement vehicles that we have available to us, then we can look towards outside investing.
So basically, once you kind of got your footing, then we start focusing and rebuilding. That's good.
Yeah.
Are there any specific financial tools, government programs, or professionals that can help people navigate financial recovery after loss that you can think of and share with our viewers?
Yeah, so one that I think of is, I believe it's the National Credit Counseling Association.
Yeah.
That may be a good one from a credit perspective. But I think imploring some people like accountants or financial experts, financial advisors, and attorneys. It all depends on your specific situation and where you are, right, in your stage of financial recovery. But really finding those individuals that are experts, that are in that space, that can help you and guide you down the right road to success.
All right, thanks, Terrell. After a quick break, we'll be joined by widow LaSandra Hutchinson to continue the conversation. In the Money continues on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
I'm Andy Zopp, the host of Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Every week, we gather for insightful conversations with local journalists and community leaders as we discuss the news of the day and how it impacts the lives of Chicagoans. Join the conversation on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app. Hyperlocal news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
Joining the conversation is LaSandra Hutchinson. Welcome to In the Money, LaSandra.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I will tell our viewers that we are on this widowhood journey together,
Yes.
and we have been.
Yeah.
And our friendship has grown through this journey.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to have you here to share your story with our viewers.
Thank you.
Can you first start by sharing your journey with us? What were some of your biggest financial challenges that you faced after the loss of your husband?
Sure. My husband Kenneth passed away in 2017, and at the time I had primarily been a stay-at-home mom. So he was the sole breadwinner in the family. So we knew he had a heart condition, but he had been doing a lot better. So we thought he was going to make a full recovery. At the end of August 2017, he died a sudden death. So at that time, my children were 6, 8, 10, and 11.
4 children.
4 children, very young. So honestly, and as you know, it was like being in the Twilight Zone. It was like being in a live nightmare that you can't get out.
Yeah.
And I would say primarily it was a roller coaster. You know, many people that have experienced loss know that you're going from shock to disbelief to anger to acceptance to fear, back to shock, back to disbelief, back to anger, but you know, and on and
you're
on.
trying to manage finances in the midst of all this. Okay.
You don't even know what day of the week it is. So it was an ordeal. It was very stressful.
How did grief impact your ability to make financial decisions, and what helped you regain control?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, I was on a roller coaster. You know, the grief had me on a roller coaster. I would say the things that helped me kind of sober up was my support system. So, I mean, everyone doesn't have the benefit of having people around them to help them, but I have folks around me helping me make lists. You know, what do we need to do tomorrow? What do we need to do next week? Obviously, my faith, you know, I just kind of leaned on my faith, knowing that I know God knew this was going to happen, even though I didn't know this was going to happen. So there must be a plan. So I kept saying,
Like, what's the plan?
what's the plan, God? And of course, when you lose somebody, then other people are asking me all the time, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I felt like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know God has a plan. So those were the things that kind of helped me center myself, just friends, family, and my faith.
What were some of the first financial steps you took to stabilize your situation? And looking back, is there anything you wish you had done differently?
First thing, I had a friend who told me about the Social Security benefits for folks that lost a spouse.
Okay.
So had never heard of that. But I had a friend who had lost, her children had lost their dad, maybe not even 6 months prior to this. Okay. So she had just done the process of going to Social Security office, having to register, fill out the application, and receiving the survivor benefits for her children. So that was the first thing I did. That helped, that relieved, obviously that helped me because I had lost 100% of income, all insurance, all medical insurance, all life insurance in one moment. So knowing that I had the opportunity to be able to file for the survivor benefits, that was maybe the first step. Then the second step was I had a couple of friends, thankfully I had a couple of friends, that were in the financial industry. So I knew they were good with money, and they sat down with me at one of their kitchen tables and we just looked at everything. We got a budget together, we organized everything, and we started talking about what were the necessities and what were some actionable steps I could start taking.
I know now that you are working full time and you have been for a number of years.
Yeah.
What was that process like of you really starting to get back into the workforce? Because you were highly educated before he passed away, but you were just a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
What was that process like about getting back into the workforce?
Yeah, it was intimidating. I had imposter syndrome. Obviously, I knew I had all the education, but that's different from having to work somewhere 9 to 5. So I had thankfully kept up a lot of professional networks. Even while I was staying home, I would do consulting. I would work in the summer. I had worked part-time. So I had kept up a skill set in some networks. But it was daunting, and I did not do it right away.
Okay.
So
how long did you take to do it?
About almost 2 years.
Okay.
So I was home. I stayed home, obviously too, because I wanted to stabilize the kids. So for them to have been used to having a mom at home, some friends helped me kind of figure out what would be the best thing. Is the best thing for them to now be in grief and now you want to go full time at work, or should we try to keep life normal? So I chose for the first couple of years to try to just keep my day-to-day life with them feeling the same. I was volunteering at the school. I was showing up at the bake sale. I kept showing up because they needed that. So that helped them really work through the grief. And a couple of years later, that's when I started to apply for jobs.
So I'm thinking that you sitting down with those friends and actually going through your budget, it helps you assess and determine that, okay, I can actually do this financially, stay at home for 2 years with the kids and still be okay in your home.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Good. So can you speak to, you said that the person that helped you, were they financial experts?
Yeah.
Were they a financial advisor? 'Cause to give people an idea of those people that they could lean on that based on your story.
Yeah, that's a great question. One is an accountant. Another one works in finance for federal government, like you do as well. But So I knew them for years, and so they were my go-to people when I knew, okay, I got to get a whole overhaul of finances together. They both said, okay, just let us know when you're ready. And I think I sat down with them at about 8 weeks in.
What would you say to someone right now who is in maybe the early stages of recovery and loss? What would your one quick piece of advice be to them?
Ask for help. Just ask for help. Even if you know how to do it, sometimes it just helps to have another person sit there with you because it's scary and it's overwhelming. So I would say money can be so intimidating, and it also can be so sensitive of a topic. But it's really it's a moment that if you ever were going to ask for some help.
You said, this is the one.
This would be the time, yes.
So this is my final question, and this is for both of you, LaSandra and Terrell. And I'm going to start with you, LaSandra. What final words of encouragement or wisdom would you share with someone feeling overwhelmed by their financial situation right now?
I would say you can do this. Know that you can do this. And I had to build my life from zero, from scratch, from the bottom. If I could do that with these 4 kids, right, you can do it. And I think that would be the main thing. Just having the confidence that you grow through grief, you grow through hard times, and you may make mistakes. That's okay. You learn from the mistakes and you get up, you keep going, but you can do it. This is possible, and who you are at the time of loss is not who you're going to be in the future. You're going to grow in this and grow in your stewardship and grow in your capacity.
And that growing through grief it's not even just the loss of a loved one. That's even because you grieve when you lose a job and even in a divorce, of course. And what would be your final word of encouragement for our viewers that may be feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think one of the first things is you're not alone,
Yeah.
right? You have resources, you have people that care about you, that want to see you succeed, that want to see you be successful in your financial journey. And then also, take it one step at a time, right? Like baby steps, right? You don't have to try to hit the home run every time. It's, can I get to first base, so to speak, right? And then when I get to first, can I get to second, and second to third, and maybe in there you may get a double or a home run here or there, but that's not the first thing, right? It's really just settling back, making sure that you understand that I'm taking it one step at a time. This is a journey. This may not happen immediately for me, but I'm going to be patient and walk it through.
Good. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I believe that our viewers will be empowered, strengthened by your wisdom and your tips and practical tools that you provided today. So thank you. On the other side of the break, our in-house financial expert, Ben Juergens, returns live in studio with an all-new Money Matters. Stay with us.
Every community has a story, a pulse, a voice waiting to be heard. At CAN TV, we bring these stories to life, from the heart of Chicago to your living room. Join us in supporting hyper-local television. Your backing helps us cover what matters directly in our communities, unfiltered and upfront. Help tell the important stories of our communities. Become a program underwriter today.
Joining me now for this week's Money Matters is Old National Bank's Director of Financial Empowerment, Ben Juergens. Welcome back, Ben.
Thanks, Tamara. It's good to be back.
I want to continue our conversation about managing money after loss, and I would love for us to discuss credit and debt in relationship to that. So my first question to you is, after a job loss or divorce or the passing of a spouse, credit scores can take a hit due to income changes and unexpected expenses. What practical steps can someone take to rebuild or maintain good credit while they're working to regain financial stability?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tamara. I think number one is let's pull a credit report, right? A lot of people, for one, just don't even know what's on there in general. But it's after a situation like this, I think it's imperative to pull it. And then what I would do is recommend seeking advice of a professional. So call a banker. Banks aren't going to pull your credit report unless you apply for a loan. So don't do that, right? But call them and say, hey, can we get an appointment? I want to go through this credit report. I want to make sure where I'm at, and maybe I need to create a budget if maybe I haven't lived off of one. And I think that is really going to help keep us in line to do that. But make sure you pay your bills on time, right? I mean, a big percentage of our credit score is just about paying bills on time, so we want to make sure that we're doing that as well.
One of the biggest stressors after a financial loss can be dealing with existing debt. What are some smart strategies people can use to manage or reduce debt before a life change happens so that they're in a stronger position if an unexpected loss happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first is to understand, do we have good debt or do we have bad debt, right? Some people say, well, what's the difference, Ben, right? Good debt is those things that help appreciate in value, right?
Okay.
Like homes and things like that. Bad debt is your credit card debt. So if we've got bad debt, we want to try to reduce that. And I think we have two options when it comes to paying off debt. We've got the avalanche method or the snowball method. For those that don't know, snowball means tackling the smallest debt first. Avalanche means let's tackle the one with the highest interest rate. I'll tell you, that's what I recommend personally. But I think it's a great idea to tackle those types of debts and really have a plan for the future. And maybe we look at consolidating some of that debt through a different loan at a lower interest rate.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned those two methods, because the avalanche can be good because you're disciplined, and because that one you start with the highest interest rate, and of course that one, it saves you money.
It does.
We want to get you to be successful.
As long as we're paying off debt, right?
Right.
That's the main part.
Keep you on track.
Yes.
Keep you on track.
Yes.
But those are all good. Let's talk a little bit about your mindset in this financial recovery period. After a major life loss, many people can feel stuck or overwhelmed when it comes to their finances. How important is mindset on managing money after loss, and what are some ways to develop that resilience to get through it?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Mindset is such a big thing in general with finances. I mean, most of Americans spend money based on a psychological emotion that they're going through anyway. So if we've experienced a loss, like we said earlier, right, step back and pause. Like, let's not make immediate decisions based on emotions, right? We've got to step back, put a plan together. And I think a big thing too is to set not only set goals, but set realistic goals, right? I mean, when a major life event happens like this, we're like, all right, I got to get out of the mortgage debt. Well, maybe I can't do that right away, right? I've got to set realistic, short, long-term, those SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, result-oriented, and time-driven goals. But I think it's a good time to educate ourselves, but practice some self-care. I think that's a big piece. Is a lot of times people will let themselves go after a loss, but let's really keep ourselves in good physical shape, emotional shape, and spiritual shape so that we can be prepared to move forward a little bit quicker should something happen.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
But before you go, you have to give me a dad joke, okay? And the word today is going to be credit.
Well, it's timing, Tamara, because I landed in Chicago today and I was using my credit card for business expenses and it kept getting declined, and I'm like, so I pulled my credit report when I got to the hotel, and apparently, it said I had an outstanding balance, so I don't know what the deal was. I'm just kidding.
On the other side of the break, we'll close out the show with this week's money moment. We're back in 30 seconds.
Hi, I'm Robin Robinson, inviting you to tune in to the new CAN TV original program, In Other News. Each week, I will break down newsworthy topics that traditional outlets may ignore, grounded in truth, fun, and blackness, from the trap house to the White House, with the big house in between. Join the conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19, or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Hyper-local news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
Take a deep breath. I saw this quote that resonated with me. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. And let me tell you, if you're in a season of loss, whether it's the loss of a spouse, a job, or a marriage, you will make it through. It may not feel like it right now, but step by step, decision by decision, you will regain your footing. I remember a time when my late husband lost his job. At first, I was nervous, worried about how we would manage. But then I sat down, looked at our budget, and assessed our resources. It was going to be tight, but I realized we would be okay. That season of financial discipline, of learning how to adjust and plan, helped strengthen me for the even harder season that came later when he passed away. Those moments taught me that preparation and a clear financial plan can make all the difference when life throws the unexpected our way. Managing money after loss is overwhelming, but you don't have to do it all at once. A budget, whether you had one before or are creating one now, can be your roadmap through this season. And while loss is often unexpected, having financial safeguards in place, like an emergency fund or life insurance, can help soften the blow when life changes in an instant. Here are your key action steps from today's episode. Number 1, breathe and don't panic. I know that's easier said than done, but avoiding your finances won't make the situation better. Facing it head on, one step at a time, will. Number 2, organize your finances and build a budget for your new reality. Take stock of what you have, including any emergency savings. Focus on your needs first, like food, housing, and essentials. Number 3, talk to your creditors and seek help from a trusted financial resource. Many creditors have options to help if you communicate with them. And if you need guidance, don't be afraid to reach out to a financial advisor, support group, or nonprofit organization. Join us next week as we are back in the lab to have money conversations with teens. We will also be back with an all-new edition of Money Matters. If you have a question about today's topic or any financial question, send them to me. Email me at tamara@moneybasicsonline.com or follow me on Instagram at IamMoneyBasics. Also follow my guests on social media. I would love to keep this conversation going, so let's connect. Remember, we are on this journey together to get, stay, and grow in the money. See you next time.